I want to get started here because I know everybody's pressed for time, and especially it's tax season, and people start filtering in. They start filtering in. I want to welcome you to another segment of the LIAFPN, the Long Island Accounting and Financial Planning Network. Uh, we are going to be renewing our memberships. We're officially about a year old since we started doing the Zoom presentations, maybe a year and a month. And we do appreciate everyone's support so that we can continually have great meetings. There's a lot of things happening, in the world as far as taxes go, as far as economics go, and it's happening very quickly. Two of the legislative things that I was involved with that I heard about, and of course, probably heard about, and it is yesterday was 420, and I think they legalized
Yes.
the sale of cannabis in New York on 420, which is kind of, my son pointed that out, not me. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
It's okay. It's okay, Neil. It's
which
legal
has-
now. It's all right.
Which
right.
has
You
some
can say it. Don't be-
significance. Okay. But it also has significance that it's going to generate a lot of tax revenue. Okay. They've also legalized sports betting in the state of New York, which is going to generate more tax revenue. So these aren't traditional tax revenues that we think about, but I can tell you from having a son that lives in Colorado who meets their budgets and everything else that, some of these things have helped their economy quite a bit without having another tax on us. In addition, right. In addition, there is one new thing that occurred last night for those of you that are concerned. I think we're all concerned. We had a meeting yesterday that my brother, who does national health policy, talked about, but something came up. I'm going to share my screen just for a second here. And this came out this morning. I got an email actually last night or this morning about the American Rescue Plan and where this is significant and impactful. And I'm going to send this around. You'll get it on the Zoom call and we'll send a separate memo around. But essentially what they've done is they're giving larger tax credits for New Yorkers with lower moderate income on the health insurance plan, on the health insurance exchange. And starting in June, higher taxpayers and entrepreneurs and small businesses can now get on the health exchange at reduced prices, supposedly. Again, I have no details other than this, but apparently New York State must have gotten some money for this. So they're throwing it out, and hopefully they're sending that money to us, the consumers. And yesterday was a hot issue. Healthcare is a hot issue because of, we all know the costs. And Larry Shear and I had a discussion last night about how expensive it was, not just for his family, but for his business and his employees. And of course, we've all bared this burden. And so very interesting and transitional. And there's a whole fact sheet here that goes into for brokers that want to be involved in helping on the health exchange. So it affects those that like Scott Lewis, who sell health insurance, are very involved in it. So it may be a big deal. I don't know how big a deal, but it could be a big deal. I think all these things.
Neil, you also have the COBRA Continuation Act right now, which is helping people that were terminated involuntarily, where their COBRA is going to be paid for. Big deal.
Wow.
Also.
That's
Very
huge.
big deal.
Yeah, it's a very big deal. So as we're helping our clients do taxes or financial planning, all these things come into play, and it's nice to have an update as to what's going on. It helps us all in moving forward. So just wanted to bring those updates to you for those who don't know. Well, I'm very honored and pleased to have Yael Lazar.
Third choice.
Third time's the charm.
That's okay. To speak with us today. She's a very interesting attorney who does estate planning, and she also does tax rescue planning, and helps very much if you got in here early, is doing stuff in the crypto world and is doing stuff with kids and minors and above and beyond the realm of many estate tax attorneys and tax attorneys that really work for the children and the protection of families and things that we should be considered in financial planning on an ongoing basis. So take it away.
All right, thank you. So some of this may, be just a refresher, a little basic review, because I took some of the presentation that I do with, other parents and other people when I'm trying to talk to them about protecting their children. So I'll try to get through it a little quickly. Let me just share my screen. Okay. Okay, so that's just my info. Everybody wants it. I started out as Iris Angel, solving people's tax problems, and now I've moved into as well estate planning angel. I'm in Locust Valley. I'm a sole practitioner. So we spend hours agonizing over, who stays with our kids. Hold on, let me just, who stays with our kids when we're running to the store, go to work, but the thought of choosing a person who's going to care for and raise our kids, should something happen to us, seems nearly impossible. And, I try to simplify that for my clients. 69% of parents in the US have not named a guardian for their kids. And I found it's usually been for two reasons. Either they didn't know they needed to, hasn't crossed their mind, or like my neighbor, she just doesn't even want to approach or discuss the subject. She thinks if she puts it out there into the universe, it'll somehow hasten her death. So I can't even talk to her about it. Or really, they can't decide who to choose. So I have this angel protection plan for children, and the first step is in helping them choose a long-term guardian and taking them through the process. The first step, if I can, okay, the first step is I ask them to list anybody who could possibly serve, their parents, their siblings, their friends, godparents, college roommates, the mailman, anyone that would be a better choice for their child than foster care. I then ask them to make a separate list, and I have married couples do this list separately because sometimes they just don't always have the same choice, and it's interesting to see and help them come together and choose one person at the end. But the second list is to make them list their parenting priorities. So, hold on. A lot of parents have maybe never consciously considered what their most important parenting priorities would be, such as, parenting style, philosophy, values, religion, relationship with their kids, location of this potential guardian, the age of the guardian. I have them consider all of these except money, because, you guys know, as financial planners, that's your responsibility as a parent, is to provide life insurance to take care of the kids. And I don't think that money should ever be a factor. How much money the guardian has should be a factor in whether they would be the right guardian for the kids. The third step is I ask them to rank their list of priority. What's really most important to them? And, your parenting priorities change as the children grow. When my children were younger, I was much more concerned about the secure attachment that they had to the person rather than, and their parenting style and philosophy, rather than any of the other philosophies. Now that my kids are older, I'm more concerned about who they would want to live with and who they'd feel comfortable with if I weren't there to raise them myself. I'd want somebody who's a close relative or friend in the same school district, or maybe somebody willing to move into my home, so that, if the kids lost me as their parent, they wouldn't be suffering the loss of their entire social world and their school by having to move to a different city or state. The last step is to consider your couple choices. Now, what do I mean by that? So a very typical nomination would be, hold on. Name a couple to serve without considering what happens if one of them dies. So if one half the couple dies, who would you want to serve? If I had named my sister and her husband, let's say Miriam and Adam Feldman, jointly only, What would happen if my sister had died? What if she were in the car accident with me? Would I want Adam raising my kids? Would he even want to? He may feel obligated to, but that doesn't necessarily mean he would want to, or I would want him raising them alone. So the solution would be, you ask the question, what if one half of the couple dies? Who would you want to serve? So in this particular case, I would say it could be Miriam and Adam Feldman jointly only. And if either of them cannot serve, then Matthew or Sarah Brown jointly or the survivor. Alternatively, Miriam and Adam Feldman jointly, and if Miriam Feldman cannot serve, then Matthew and Sarah Brown jointly or the survivor. Adam Feldman may not serve alone. So that was, one of the mistakes that we try to avoid in planning. The second mistake is only naming one guardian. You should name alternates. Ideally, I would say 3. Mistake number 3, like we talked about earlier, is not considering financial resources. So this goes back to not considering it as a parenting priority. I believe the guardians you choose also should be different than the person who's in charge of the life insurance proceeds. This way you have kind of a check and balance system in place. Ideally, it would be people that know each other and get along with each other and will work together for the best interests of the children. The fourth mistake I try to avoid in drafting these kids protection plans is not using a standalone guardian nomination document and leaving no clear instructions to the caregivers or guardians. So if somebody dies, most of the state attorneys in the past would have named the guardian in the will only. Well, where's the will when somebody dies? How long will it take to find it? And forget if you die, what if you just become incapacitated? You haven't passed, you're just in the hospital, but you can't communicate. Your will is not even in effect yet. So you need a standalone nomination document, and you also need clear instructions to your caregivers and guardians, telling them what to do. The third document that I put in the Angel Protection Plan is a confidential exclusion of guardianship. So one of the other big mistakes I think people make is not excluding anyone you don't want to serve as a guardian no matter what happens. We all have that one person, that one family member that you'd never want in a million years raising your kids. So let me just start with a quick example. So a friend of mine, she's a single mother of 2 kids. She's got a daughter and a son. And if something happened to her, both her sister and sister-in-law would have wanted to take custody of them and would have both petitioned the court to be the guardian of her children. Her sister was in her 20s. She traveled a lot, had never been married, never had any kids, was not particularly financially stable. But her sister-in-law, on the other hand, was an adult woman with her own children. She had a steady job and she'd been married for a number of years. So just on paper, who do you think the judge would pick? Obviously the sister-in-law, because on paper, she appears to be the best choice. But only my friend knows that, in fact, she would be the last person she would ever want raising her kids. Her marriage wasn't particularly a good and healthy one. Her kids were on their way to being juvenile delinquents. And while everything looked good from the outside on paper, behind the scenes, it was a completely different story. And you never know what goes on in a family behind closed doors. Certainly the court doesn't. And in contrast, her sister, who looked like she didn't have it all together on the outside, was actually pretty terrific on the inside. She was emotionally stable. She was extremely responsible. And if necessary, she would have quit traveling, to settle down and raise the kids. But if my friend hadn't named legal guardians, it would be up to a court to decide, a court that doesn't know my friend, doesn't know her children, and a judge that just wants to handle the situation. So this mistake of not excluding anyone that you wouldn't want to serve as a guardian is really important. And so I have this confidential exclusion of guardianship document that I have my clients fill out. They would list, any individuals they would never want in a million years raising their kids. And then it gives them the opportunity to list why. It could be you disagree with their parenting style, they have an unstable family environment, different set of values than what you want your children raised with. There's a strained relationship. Nobody sees this document. It's kept private, and it's kept private until such time as it's needed. If that person would happen to come forward to seek custody of the children, we'd show them that document, and 9 out of 10 times they change their mind about seeking custody because they don't want this document made public in court, either because it'd be embarrassing or humiliating for them, depending upon the reasons that you listed. So I think, this is a great document to have in the plan. The fourth document I include is a short-term guardian or first responder emergency guardian document. So hold on 1 second. Most people, I'd venture to say most people aren't aware of the necessity of naming a short-term guardian. It's another mistake you can make if you don't name one. It's not unusual these days for family members to be spread across the country. It's also not unusual for the long-term guardian that you name ultimately to live in another state. So with my clients, I'll usually ask them when I meet with them, where are your children? And they'll generally reply at home with a babysitter or in school. And the next question I ask them is, well, what would happen to your children if you didn't make it home from this meeting? Or, if they're out to dinner on date night on a Saturday night, what if you didn't make it home from this dinner? And a lot of the times the reaction I get is dead silence, or, I've even have, a few mothers start to cry. What happens to your children if you don't come home? So what's going to happen when the police get to your house and, they knock on the door and the babysitter answers and she's informed them, she's been informed that something's had happened. What is the babysitter going to do? Where's the will? Who's the named guardian? How long is it going to take for those people to get there? And what are the authorities going to have to do in that situation? Your babysitter could volunteer to keep the children with her overnight, but the authorities don't know anything about her, and leaving the children in her care without any legal documentation is a potential liability for the authorities. They'll unfortunately have no choice but to take the kids into the care of Child Protective Services. I tell my clients, can you imagine your children being led away by the police or a social worker and taken to a foster family or worse? Your children would have just lost their parents. They're heartbroken, scared, and angry that they can't stay with the babysitter or their neighbors. And it won't be forever. Eventually, we figure the authorities will figure it out. But, I want you to think about this. Is there any amount of time that's an acceptable amount of time if something just happened to you or your clients for your children to be in the care of strangers? And I say absolutely not. No parent wants that. And I certainly wouldn't want that for my girls. And so the solution is to include this short-term nomination of guardian document. Had the babysitter in, these examples, had the babysitter had on the kitchen counter a list of names and contact numbers of short-term guardians in this scenario, she could have called them, the authorities could have called them, they would have come over with copies of the documents that you've provided them with, and then the children would never have had to spend any minute and, any amount of time with strangers. They would have been, I'm gonna skip ahead here, they would have been in loving, familiar arms to comfort them. Now, I'm a belt and suspenders kind of girl, kind of like Larry, over there. I like to name 3 or 4 local friends or family within 20 minutes, to have, peace of mind. Anyone in your social circle would be better than Child Protective Services, And a mistake to avoid with this process is not notifying people who you've named as guardians properly. You can see the scenario where they're contacted and they have no idea that they've been named either as a short-term or long-term guardian. So we either send them letters, or we have, our clients send them letters notifying them that they've been named as a potential guardian and giving them a set of instructions what to do if they're ever contacted. Again, guardians should have copies of these documents so that they can show Child Protective Services. Part of notifying the guardians, I found with myself and with other clients, is that it creates this sort of godparent effect. When you notify people they've been named as guardians, they begin to feel more responsible for the children. Family ties are strengthened, and you want more people in this world to feel responsible for your children. It's important for my children to know, and other people's children to know, that there are other humans out there that they can count on besides, their parents. I love knowing that my daughter has other parents, and I'm a second mom to lots of their friends. And I think it's great. The last thing that I do as with regards to the short-term guardians is I have these wallet ID cards that I provide to my clients that they keep in their wallets that list their short-term guardians. and their telephone numbers. And basically at the top of the card, it says, I have minor children at home waiting, at home or at school for care. If I'm unable to communicate, please contact the people on this list who, they have the authority to care for my children. So this way, if medical personnel or police go through their wallets, they'll find this and they'll know what to do. The fifth document in my plan is a medical power of attorney for children. So what is this medical power of attorney? It's a legal document that gives another individual the authority to make medical decisions for your children. Now, why would you need a medical power of attorney? So I'm going to give you a couple of scenarios. So you finally get to take that adults only vacation with your kids, and you're sitting on a beach on some tropical island, sipping your fruity drink. And then you get that call that your child fell out of the tree he was climbing, and broke his wrists and one of his legs as well. So the caregiver responsible for your child who brought him to the hospital needs to be able to authorize wrist surgery and other medical care to help your child. And without this power of attorney, they wouldn't really be able to do that. Kids on a traveling sports team, if the coach accompanies, your child to the hospital because they got injured during the game, he would need that medical power of attorney to get the care needed if you weren't able to get there in time or be reached. You go on, you leave your kids with the grandparents, let's say, for a couple of weeks, breathing that fresh country air or the beach air, and they get hurt or have some sort of allergic reaction. Even though they're family members, it's always great to have that medical power of attorney. And, my daughter goes away to gymnastics sleepaway camp every year. She's a competitive gymnast. I always give the camp a medical power of attorney because, as you can imagine, flipping multiple times on a 4-inch beam, she can get hurt. And since her camp is out of state and I'm, several hours away, I'd want her to be able to get the care that she needs. And the last scenario is, last year I took a trip. And I took my daughter's friend with us to Mexico, and I brought a power of attorney, medical power of attorney for her daughter, just in case something happened to her, out of the country. I also include a document where you can fill out all of your child's healthcare information. It gives you the opportunity to fill in the child's full name, date of birth, the healthcare providers, contact info, child's medical history, including allergies, your medical insurance information, parent contact information, short-term guardians if they can't be reached. And then for your adult children, because there still are children no matter how old they are, when you have children going off to college, I prepare the same documents that adults would need, basically a healthcare proxy, a living will, and the HIPAA release. You never want to get that call, which I happen to get. I have 2 girls in college. One of them, I had all the documents executed. My second one, my middle daughter, I did not have them executed because when she went off to college, she wasn't 18 yet. She was still 17. And I got that call freshman year that, and I was very lucky that the school broke protocol and called me. They didn't tell me anything besides your daughter's okay for the moment and she's at this particular hospital, but they couldn't tell me anything else or wouldn't tell me anything else. And I had a 4.5 drive, down to DC, stressed over what happened to her, what was going on. I couldn't reach her. She wasn't answering her cell phone. She wasn't calling me. The hospital didn't reach out. So, it was a very stressful drive to find out what had happened to her. And even calling the hospital didn't do any good because since I didn't have a HIPAA release or any of these other forms, they wouldn't have told me anything. So I had to wait till I got down there to figure out exactly what had happened. So I try to avoid my clients ever having that stressful phone call. Okay. And the last component to my plan, which I venture to say most, if not all, none of the estate attorneys do, is I have a section, a module that I can call Family Legacy, the intangibles. So why I kind of got into estate planning or the kids protection planning is that I had a friend whose family member, she was 26, she died unexpectedly, leaving a 3-year-old daughter behind, and she had no plan in place. Now, as part of the process, I'd like to have this included because what do you think this 3-year-old daughter is going to remember about her mother when she grows up, besides, a few pictures by her bedside, a few stories family members may have told her? She's going to miss out on all that motherly advice. She'll wonder on her high school graduation, would my mom be proud of me? What would she tell me about going off to college? What advice would she give me about boys? What would she say to me on my wedding day? And it's really tragic because it doesn't really have to be that way. The intangibles to the children are way more important than the money and the legal documents you leave behind. What if your children could hear your words of wisdom as they grow? How comforting would that be to them during their childhood? They'd feel your presence and, more importantly, your guidance, even though you weren't physically there. So what I do is I call it a family legacy interview. And during this interview, my clients are taken through a series of questions that they have chosen um, on topics to choose from, for example, or, what about the kids? What matters most to us? The importance of family values, words of wisdoms, my final wishes. This interview is recorded, either audio or video, depending, my client's preference, and depending what you want to pass on to your children. In my opinion, video is better. My most prized possession is an hour video of my dad who passed 8 years ago. My cousin had recorded him talking about his childhood, the crazy antics he got into, and his experience surviving the Holocaust. And so whenever I'm feeling like I'm missing the sound of his voice or his face, I just hit play on the video. And, I get to hear his voice and see his mannerisms again and everything that he has to say. And, my children get to hear him talking about his childhood and his experiences. And one day his great grandchildren will be able to know him and hear about his experiences, in the Holocaust, when all the Holocaust survivors have passed. I wished I'd had a similar opportunity. My grandparents all died when I was toddler. So I don't have anything, I know nothing about them besides, what my parents had told me. So I've had clients write letters for their children, for their birthdays, and I've had them write letters for other milestones in their life. The guardians give them these letters on all those special occasions. I've had mothers videotape themselves showing their daughters the little daily lessons, how to do their hair, how to put on makeup, how to shave their legs, They've even recorded themselves singing happy birthday. I've had fathers do videos on how to ride a bike, how to fix things, how to throw a football, how to even change the oil in the car. You get the point. It's up to you and your clients, what you want to impart to your children. But I can tell you that in the few cases where the unimaginable has happened to my clients, it's an incalculable loss to the children, and the children miss them every day. It's a hole that no one can fill. But my clients are right there besides the guardians raising their children through these letters and videos. And that's brought, tremendous comfort to those children during that difficult time and throughout their childhood. So I've used these video interviews also to pass down family stories from generation to generation, like my father's video. You can use these videos to talk about special heirlooms, family heirlooms and the stories behind them, to pass those on. There's really no limit what you can do with these videos. And, if my clients don't feel comfortable doing it, with me, we have smartphones. We now have ring lights and stands and everything else. It's so easy to do these videos to leave behind for your children. And that's basically my angel protection plan for kids. We have everything. And so my why was, basically the story of the 26-year-old who lost her daughter. I just found it was so important that it's kind of become a mission of mine to try to protect as many minor children as possible, within New York State and across the country. I created an online course that parents can purchase, and I've given them templates for all of these documents. Those who buy the course can also get the ID wallet card. They just have to email me their the names of their short-term guardians and their telephone numbers, and I make up the ID cards for them and I ship them out to them. But I feel it's so important, especially with what's gone on in this pandemic in this last year. There are a lot of single parents out there that, God forbid, something were to happen to them. They need to have a plan in place. You don't want to leave it to your individual state, and the laws of intestacy and, a system that doesn't know anything about your kids, so I'm just out there lecturing. I'm on Business Talk Radio. I'm just out there doing presentations on the Angel Protection Plan for kids to just try to get as many kids protected. And that's it.
Yeah, that's terrific. And what you've done is provided a huge gap in people's planning. And, we talk about this all the time in the insurance world, in the legal world, in the accounting world. You're always looking for the what ifs. And, yesterday we talked about, we don't know when we're going to need an MRI. We don't know when we're going to die. We don't know when we're going to be disabled. We don't know the what ifs. But you know what? You've put together comprehensive planning tools that can take care of so many what ifs. Just like when my child was born, you could talk about child protecting your house. With my daughter, I had to put gate locks on the refrigerator. I had to, I mean, she was bad. She was tough.
My sister had to put bungee cords on the oven because my nephew, who's on the spectrum, used to try to climb into the ovens.
Right, but not having a child, you wouldn't know to do all these things. And not having been through life experiences, you wouldn't know you needed those things. I know when I went to college, I had pneumonia and I was admitted to the hospital, and it was like, my parents were dealing with some other things. These are things, these are great to know and great to pass on, generated. So I thank you. What a great presentation.
You're welcome. I mean, in the colleges, if your child doesn't sign the FERPTA form, nobody's calling you. Nobody's talking to you.
Right.
And I'm just really, really lucky that her school broke protocol, at least enough to tell me where she was, that something had happened. I mean, they could have told me the specifics, but they didn't, and I respected that. But, my daughter, my middle one, is the true middle child who's super stubborn. And, she's like, I'm not signing that FERPTA form. I'm 18. You don't need to know anything. Forget that I'm paying tuition. I'm not, she refused to sign it. And we hadn't yet done these documents because she was underage, And
Yael,
yeah.
Did you mean HIPAA form as opposed to FERPTA?
No, the college has a FERPTA form.
Is that what it's the acronym? Okay.
Yeah, their FERPTA form basically
At
allows
nerds,
schools.
we think of it as the international ownership of real estate.
Yeah, the FERPTA form, FERPA, not FERPTA, FERPA.
There you go.
FERPA. You're right. Yeah, you're right. Not the FERPA. Yeah, the FERPA form, which just allows them to, you can talk to them about financials, you can talk to them about the courses or whatever you want to talk about your child's, education, including the medical. And Kira was that stubborn child. I'm not signing that form. She was just being difficult. But it was a frightening call. And then it really had occurred to me, with the long-term guardians, what if you were just incapacitated? You're not dead, so your will doesn't even come into play. So who's taking care of your kids?
Right.
Then you're gonna have all these family members stop by, and eventually they'll figure it out. And clearly your child would go to one of the family members. But what if it's the one family member you would never want having your child? My sister lives in another state. She has her hands full with her boys. I don't necessarily agree with some of her parenting styles, so I wouldn't want my sister having my children. I would actually want my girlfriend up the block to have her. So
Right. Makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
Hey, Larry, you had a question about Larry Bloom about medical directives?
Yes, question about that. In my case, I have adult children who are not married yet. So let's say we prepare a medical directive. I guess the questions are twofold. Number one, is this something that is governed by a state law? Like what if they lived in another state or injured in another state? Would the other state recognize this? And number two, what has your experience been in, if I have this document, hospitals accepting this right away without having to go to court or something if I had to make a medical decision?
Yeah, I mean, so you're talking about adult children. I would assume whatever state they're living in, they would have prepared a medical, healthcare proxy within that state. If you're talking about college kids, I mean, obviously I would have done it here in New York. I think the hospitals do recognize that power of attorney. They want somebody to make, have authority to make the decision, and that authority is chosen by the patient. Larry, I don't know if you have a different view on the state law on that.
Well, as far as the state law goes, each state has an obligation pursuant to our federal system. It's called comity, not the happy laughing stuff, but COMMITY. And that is the requirement of each state to recognize the substantive laws of the other states. So it would be effective. We see it all the time where people travel to other states and the power of attorney and the healthcare proxy do in fact, they're scrutinized, but they are effective.
Yeah, and in terms of, the online course, when I provide the templates for parents to fill out for these documents, there's of course that legal disclaimer, I can only practice law in New York. These are the types of documents you should have put together in a plan. You must check the state law in your state in terms of signing and executing these documents, whether your state requires 2 witnesses, 3 witnesses, a notary. I do give some advice there, but, to make sure that I'm not practicing law in other states I'm not licensed in, I do tell them, these are the things you need in a comprehensive plan, but please seek, further clarification in your state for how they need to be executed.
Yeah, on the FERPA forms, do the colleges have standard forms, or do you need a lawyer to prepare those for you?
The FERPA, the colleges have their own FERPA forms, which allows them to disclose information to you, but the documents that, the healthcare proxy, that comes from you. That doesn't come from the school. The school, the FERPA form is really just a disclosure, that they have, the student has given them the authority to speak to the parents on financial matters, on their grades, or disclose whatever information.
Thank you.
I have
I-
a change of direction question. I might have missed something when I signed on a little late, so I apologize. And yeah, all great information. And I appreciate when you talk about guardianship, making sure you know who kids are going to, God forbid something happens. Part of, I guess, guardianship and part of leaving someone in place is financial protections for your kids. When you leave someone as a guardian, I know most of my clients have, let's say, trusts or assets to go to the kids. Is there something separate that you suggest if I'm saying to my best friend, I'd like you to be guardian of my kids? Do you set up a separate trust to give them resources to pay for taking care of your kids?
I do recommend that the life insurance proceeds be placed in a trust for your children. And I usually recommend, I don't like to have the trustee of the trust be the same person as the person raising the children.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, there's no check and balance there in how that money is spent. And you want to make sure that it goes to your children. So ideally, I had mentioned earlier, I don't know if you had missed it or not, was that I try to have somebody, ideally 2 people that know each other. So and they get along well and will do what's in the best interest of the child. But I like to have 2 different people. And sometimes you can have co-trustees, of the trust, just as another check and balance.
But keeping the actual guardianship control separate from the financial control is
Correct. I don't want the guardians motivated by money.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you can't do it that way. That's just my advice to my clients. It's ultimately up to them to make that decision. If they truly trust in that person that they're selecting. Me personally, I just don't like to have 2 different people.
That's great. I wanted to ask another question. And years ago, I used to have like a business card. On the back of it was a healthcare proxy with 2 signed signatures. Is that a legal document for someone to carry around in their wallet? Let's say, my kid going to school is a healthcare proxy. Who to call when there's an issue? They have like a little card in their wallet. That's an actual healthcare proxy as well.
I mean, is it the entire healthcare proxy just reduced,
Reduced on a card,
signed, notarized?
signed and notarized.
One font.
What'd you say, Larry?
I said one font. Really, really,
One
really
font, yeah.
Yes. I
What
mean, that can be legally binding, correct?
I mean, my guess is yes. Larry, do you agree?
I do.
Yeah.
Actually,
I think-
Kevin Johnson, who's on the call, saw those cards 15 years ago.
Okay.
Didn't you, Kevin? You remember that? Kevin, you still there? Oh, anyhow,
Yes,
I like to,
So
I also,
I really need healthcare proxies for my 25-year-old, my 23-year-old, my 17-year-olds that are going to turn 18.
Absolutely.
you do.
They're out of state. They're going to college. They're graduate school, and
Yeah.
Definitely.
Peace of mind. It just gives you peace of mind. I know that when I put my head down at night, and God forbid I don't wake up the next morning, I know that I've got a plan in place. My kids know where it is. Adults in my life know where the plan is. All the documents, I put all of the documents, including the will or trust or whatever, in a big binder in one spot. I encourage my clients to put their life insurance policies or any retirement accounts, or at least have a list of all of their assets in one location as well, so that the executor is not running around, trying to find, all of the assets, statements all over the house, different places, try to be central located. I tell them never to put their will or these documents in a safety deposit box, you guess for obvious reasons. But if they did make that mistake, you have a legal standalone nomination document that's hopefully outside, of the safety deposit box if they didn't, follow my advice.
Let's say you keep, let's say you have all the documents, you're not gonna walk around with them like you said, but can you keep a picture like on your phone to show a hospital or something, would they accept?
Yeah, I actually, I encourage my clients, we put them on a flash drive so that they have it. Even if I've texted some of the documents over, you could text them to the short-term guardian so that they keep a copy of it on their phone, at least in the short term. I think the authorities would want to see the actual legal document. But it's good to have a copy, on your phone, especially with technology. You can text it right over. You have PDFs of it. That's why, on the flash drive, so you can keep a copy on the computer. You can email it to everybody just in terms of notification.
There you go. We have a business for you, Yael.
Belt and suspenders.
Legal documents online that every state accepts, that you can just show it that way.
Yeah. Well, I don't necessarily want to practice law, in other states, but I think just getting the information out there, even if, I have this 25-page guidebook that includes all of this information that parents can get, or I hand out sometimes at presentations for free when I'm not selling it. But I think just having the knowledge, even if they don't do the plan themselves, there are other attorneys in my network that practice the way that I do across the US. So I can refer them to, attorneys that do these kinds of kids protection planning in other states. But at least they come to, when they're meeting with an estate planning attorney, even if they're not in my network, they can tell their estate planning attorneys, these are the documents that I want to have in my plan. And it may educate, an attorney in another state, as to what they should be doing to protect children. For me, it's about education. I'd love to always take on more clients in New York. That's, a given. But my main mission was really to protect children. So, I'm happy to share information with other attorneys. I'm happy to share information with the parents to give to their attorneys, in other states. It's just knowledge is power, and there's just already, we can't protect our children from everything, but, if we can protect them from a lot of things and close these gaps in the estate planning that have developed over the years, then my job is done, And
Thank
the other
you.
thing, and the last thing also, never, ever, ever make a child under 18 a beneficiary to a life insurance policy. Should always be in a trust, always.
Excellent. Listen, thank you for a great presentation. If
pleasure.
there's no further questions, I do want to spend a few minutes just kind of networking, and, it's part of what we do. And just, if everybody could just take a minute or two, just introduce themselves, tell them what they do. I'll start around the horn, and I'll start with Larry Bloom, just for those that
Okay,
don't know you.
Good morning, Larry Bloom. I'm with Bloom Schoen CPAs, a small full-service CPA and advisory firm in Jericho, New York.
And he's also, on the board of LIAFPN. Larry Shearer, co-founder, LIAFPN.
Okay. What I do is wills, trust and estate, and business succession planning. We have another area that we've been growing, which is the elder law section. And the things that Yael is talking about are things that we have omitted, and it will be addressed more in the future. So Yael, fantastic.
Thank you.
Eric?
Good morning, everyone. Eric Freed, Janover LLC, mid-sized accounting firm, offices in Garden City and Manhattan. Concentrate my practice in small and medium-sized family businesses and high net worth individuals.
Adam, how about you?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Adam Palmara. I have a financial practice out of Melville, New York. Excuse me, with Northwestern Mutual. And I'm also a member of PGP, which is Professional Group Plan. I do group health insurance for companies as well.
Excellent.
And you play the
Scott?
guitar.
I used to. Now it's just decoration.
It's all good.
My daughter just started learning to play the electric guitar.
I have a 2.5-year-old, so I don't get any time for myself anymore.
And I don't know if Scott or Donnie is there. Darren?
At Darren Gang, Jet Direct Mortgage. I originate residential mortgages and commercial mortgages. And I have a new investor that on bridge loans, they will give loans, they'll go into a junior position, second, third position. So someone does, if they need quick money, they don't have to take a whole new mortgage.
Nice. And Tim?
Darren, you may want to talk to Jordan about that. I'll call you later.
I'll call him, yeah.
Tim Kennedy?
Good morning, Tim Kennedy, U.S. Mortgage Corporation. I'm also on the board, all lending, just like Jet Direct, but my specialty is reverse mortgages as a tax-efficient retirement income tool for seniors. Reverse mortgage is not what it used to be, and four simple words, just a mortgage. So Tim Kennedy, thank you.
And Warren Bergstein?
Warren Bergstein, I'm partner in Edelman Katz and Mon. We're a full-service tax and accounting firm in Manhattan, Times Square. I'm working mostly from home these days in Langhorne, Pennsylvania. So it's good to see New Yorkers for a change.
Absolutely.
And my special area, I work mostly in estate planning and estates and trusts, but the firm is a full-service tax and accounting firm.
Excellent. Thank you. Scott was here and he just left. John Doolin, I know you don't have your camera on. Still there? Oh, he popped off. Scott, there you go. Why don't you introduce yourself, and we're just kind of going around the horn here.
Sorry, guys, I gotta go. I got some people installing some railings on a new patio, so
Oh, okay,
it wasn't easy getting people here quickly. Let me tell you, everybody's like 5-6 weeks out.
gotcha. All right,
Thank you. That was very good stuff, Yael.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
right, okay. Scott, so for everybody's information, financial planner. He also specializes in doing Medicare insurance as well as life insurance.
Sorry about that.
Medicare supplements and the like. So I'll do your intro for you. And for those of you who don't know me, Neil
Thanks, Neil.
Himmelstein, name of my firm is Main Street Planning Group. We're an independent wholesaler of life, disability, long-term care products and fixed annuities. Co-founder at LIAFPN with Larry Shearer. And I hope you enjoyed today's session. I certainly did. And we specialize at LIAFPN in not only putting on quality meetings on various topics that apply to all financial services, but we also make quality introductions for those who are members, which generate business. And that's what we're all about. And we're about doing business and also forming collaborative teams that can help our clients succeed. And that's what we do, and that's who we are. So again, I thank you for coming and hope you can come to our next sessions. For those of you who aren't members, I encourage you to join. It's very inexpensive. LIAFPN.org is our website. We do lots of stuff. Please join us there. You can do membership, and we vet everybody that comes in so you don't get schlubs. That's who we are. So thanks again for coming.
And
One
before
last
we
thing.
go, I just want to say one quick thing. for the first time ever, our government in New York State is actually going to be doing the same thing our 16-year-olds were doing. That is hoping to get the really most potent pot out there. Because the tax rates are going to be greater on the higher the potency, the higher the tax.
There
Which
you
you
go.
see when you try and fill in those forms.
One last thing too, for those who missed at the beginning, Neil, anybody who wants that cryptocurrency investing book for dummies,
Yeah.
you can just email me, or if you, I'll send it to you, Neil, and since I have your
We'll distribute it out. I think that's
yeah,
great.
to whoever wants it.
Yeah, thank you. I'd love to see that.
Great stuff.
Okay.
Maybe we can have you come in again this time to speak about the cryptocurrency, because this is so interesting.
Yep, it's a very hot
Absolutely.
topic.
We're shortly, very soon, going to head into a massive altcoin season where huge amounts of money are going to be made. So it'd be nice for people to get in on it if they feel comfortable. I've been teaching friends and family and colleagues, even the receptionist at my endodontist wanted to know more about it. Other people burying their heads in the sand can't even conceive of it, but we're moving into this fourth the fourth revolution here, the quantum financial system, and there's no turning back. We will be a cashless society within the next 3 years, I believe.
Was that what my son is doing when he transfers money to Coinbase? He's buying cryptocurrencies?
He is.
Yes.
He is. Smart boy.
We'll see.
So,
Excellent.
all right. Anytime. you let
Okay,
me know, I'd
great
be happy to
presentation. Thanks
participate.
again, Yael.
You're
Great,
welcome.
good stuff.
Have a great day, everybody.
You too.
Uh,
All right, take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.